Good morning, Hauppauge High School community. It's wonderful to see you. Hello, everybody wave. There we go. It is Wednesday, so it is Wellness Wednesday. It's about 1 p.m. We're starting this video. Today, we are really lucky to be joined by these guys. These guys are super close on the front lines, doing a lot of work around social emotional health. They're also really savvy people, really interesting people that have a lot of perspective about how to take care of oneself and think about who we are and where we are in very challenging times. So excited to be here with them again today. And without too much segue, we'll have Mr. Gallagher, Mr. James Gallagher, come on and start us off here today. Nice to see everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. It's good to be with you all again, Hauppauge community, for another Wellness Wednesday. And I will introduce today our practice and micro practice. So first, in Wellness Wednesday 1 and 2, our practices were focused practices. We looked at a minute to arrive and doing a 3 breaths practice which focused on our breath and our intention. Today, I want to offer kind of the reverse, which is more of an open awareness practice. And the idea is when our minds are actually really kind of stuck on something, we are really focused on either on a thought or an emotion, and just offer a practice that helps us maybe get some space and really unstuck or disconnect from what our mind is really connected to. So the way we'll do that is I'll guide us through a very short, what's called open awareness practice, and then give you a shorter version, which is a micro practice. There are many great analogies and metaphors that are connected to an open awareness practice. I'm going to use one around a big open sky. It actually looks like it's a beautiful day in Hauppauge today, big blue sky with some clouds. And the idea is our minds are the big blue sky, and the clouds are the thoughts, the emotions that kind of roll through. We don't want to connect and launch on to one particular cloud, but rather just stay as that big, expansive sky. So let's see what that feels like actually through an experience and a practice. So as always, just kind of finding a comfortable posture as you're watching this. And that could be seated. Feel free to lie down. You can keep your eyes open or lower your gaze or close them completely if you like. You could just maybe feel your feet on the floor or the weight of your body in the chair. And then firstly, just bring your awareness to your mind and just notice what's there. Keeping the focus on the big, expansive blue sky. And then maybe seeing what clouds roll through. And we'll just kind of honor what might be there. First might be a feeling of frustration. I'm tired of this. Been home too long. There might be some emotion around loss. My baseball season was canceled. I miss my lacrosse team. And just noticing that it's there, accepting it, and give it a slight label, meaning see the cloud roll through and say frustration, loss, disappointment. And we can also do the same for happy thoughts. It's springtime. The weather's warming. There's news that professional sports might come back. Might actually be able to take a trip, get out of the house. But the same thing, just label those happy thoughts and emotions. Don't attach to them. Creating some space between whatever rolls into the mind and the big open sky of awareness. And maybe through that space, we notice how in just a few seconds, no matter how intense an emotion or a thought, it really does just pass through our mind, just like a cloud passing through the sky. And maybe we don't have to stay still stuck on that thought or emotion and not have it drive our behavior and our mood. With that, I'll just invite a soft bell. When you no longer hear the bell, you can raise your gaze if it was lowered or open your eyes if they were closed. And I'll just end with our micro practice. You can just bring a little silly wiggle into your body, raise your gaze if they were lowered, open your eyes if they were closed. So that was a lot in terms of a guided practice. I want to offer you a very simple way to practice this as you move through your day. You may hear some news that's disappointing. You may hear some news that's exciting. Just simply name it to tame it. And by that, you can just say, name it, disappointment. And you're taming it by not letting it control your entire emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in that moment. And just play with that to see if simply naming what moves through your mind gives you a little space and ease and some calm. So with that, as always, I thank you for your practice. And I am going to transition over to Miss Griffin, who's going to take us a little deeper on our Wellness Wednesday today.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, James, for sharing that micro practice. For me, this particular week resonates, as so often we get stuck in our emotional brain. Many of us ruminate on negative thoughts that can cause us to feel very overwhelmed. I think of this like a cyclone. At the base, it may start out small as just a few thoughts or feelings, but as we think and overthink, it can consume us, whirling around in our head, getting bigger and more overwhelming as we allow it to grow. So how do we get unstuck? First, as James helped us to learn, it's important to try and gain control of our thoughts and feelings and try to understand them. So if you follow the acronym STOP, it might help you remember this in times when you're in that cycle. First, stop for a moment and be still with your thoughts and feelings. Take a step back. When we're ruled by our emotions, it's often hard to find the clarity we need. In that space, observe what you are feeling. Try to name the emotion. For example, sometimes we know we're angry, but if we stop and really think about it, what we're feeling is frustration or disappointment. There could be a myriad of feelings that really exist below the emotional response that we have, or the feeling that we're most comfortable with at the surface. Once we've identified how we're really feeling, we can begin to think about how we want to manage that emotion. We can proceed more mindfully when we know why we are feeling what we are and how that is affecting us. Especially in times when we're overwhelmed, following a clear-cut thought process can significantly help us to control our emotional response. So another easy acronym to follow is RAIN. Like James said, it's the concept of recognizing and observing what's going on inside of our body, allowing it to just be. It's that accepting that this is how we feel in this particular moment in time. In this moment are powerful words, reminding ourselves that our thoughts and feelings can be temporary, can help to provide a calming sense that this too will pass. Investigating without judging ourselves what we need. What are these emotions doing to us physically? What is it that we want or need in this moment? How exactly do we feel? And then nurturing ourselves based on that need, which is again that space we often need to identify the thought or emotion as just that, but not to allow it to dictate who we are or how we manage it. I often try to remember that feelings are not facts. Feelings can be like a cloudy day, filling our head with overwhelming thoughts. Very often, we get caught up in a feeling that consumes our sense of reality. For example, a student could be feeling like they failed a test and ruminating over this for days, thinking about questions they may have gotten wrong, only to receive the test back and learn that they passed with flying colors. Or maybe this happens when you have a phone call or email go unread or unresponded to. We assume that someone might be mad at us or overthink what we wrote in the message, only to discover that the person simply overlooked the message or just simply forgot to reply. And reminding ourselves that while our emotions are real, they are not always our reality. We may find it easier to manage how we choose to respond and how much we allow our emotions to control our reactions. So, as we learned in today's micro practice, when we're feeling stuck or overwhelmed by thoughts or feelings, try to notice it and reflect. Let it be. Acknowledge its presence in our life and breathe. Take a minute to slow down your mind. These simple steps can often allow us to get a better handle on how we are feeling and can also help us to model for those around us a calmer, more controlled demeanor. Thank you.
James, so in the micro practice, you talked about naming it to tame it. And I was seeing the clouds in my own mind, and some of the words that you talked about were, disappointment or frustration or even the positive. But what happens when you can't put a name on the emotion? What do you do?
Great question. Thank you, Ms. Ferrara, and thank you, Ms. Griffin. That was awesome. So first, the idea of naming it, why it's helpful, is we're actually kind of coming out of the emotional part of our brain, and by accessing the language part of our brain, which is giving it a label, kind of takes the energy that might be fixated on the emotional response and brings that energy into the thinking part of the brain. And that is just an act of calming and self-care, really. If you can't think of a label, I would say, see if you can just fall into the sensations of the body. In our kind of culture, we often just we're so up in our heads that we forget that we're also this whole system that is a body. And there is data there, and there are resources there. So if you feel something come through your mind, you can't describe exactly what it is through a label. See if you can just go physically into your body. And if it's maybe a more negative thought or emotion, you might feel a tension in your shoulders or a furrowing or a constricting in your face. So you can just feel that. If it's a happier thought or emotion, the opposite might be true. You might feel like a lightening or a brightening in the chest or a relaxation in the shoulders. So just as easily of using a label, you can also use physical sensation just as a resourcing and self-management tool.
Thank you. Is it okay when asked, what do you think or how are you feeling? And if you're not sure, like, is it okay to give a response? Simply, I can't name it right now.
Absolutely. Later on, we'll focus on a micro practice of acceptance. So I will say just simply, yes, it is totally fine and normal not to be able to describe maybe why or what you are feeling. That actually can be an opportunity to go back to some of our prior micro practices. So maybe the mind is distracted and I can't focus or name what I'm thinking or experiencing. You can do the focus attention and just bring the awareness into maybe just the breathing or the natural sounds in the room. And that can kind of help you bring your whole mind and emotions into better focus. But the short answer is it's absolutely okay and normal to not be able to explain or even know why you're feeling a certain way.
Does anyone have a question or a thought regarding the micro practice that we experienced earlier with James?
Joy, just wanted to make a comment in terms of what you were just saying too. I think for many people, the natural distractions in our life that keep us from often identifying how we're feeling have sort of disappeared in this time when we're really restricted with all of the outside stuff that tends to keep us really busy. And so I think what we're finding is a lot of people right now are having difficulty in managing their emotions because they can't distract themselves from the feelings that they're having. And I think that some of, what James is trying to teach us is that, in allowing ourselves sometimes to sit with that, gives us time to really reflect on what we're feeling and how we're feeling. And I think in this, as overwhelming as that can be, it also provides us with a really great opportunity to get a lot more in touch with ourselves so that, sometimes we're very quick to react because we hit that surface feeling and we respond to it. But allowing ourselves right now to really reflect a little bit more may make people feel a lot more empowered to respond to, what they're really experiencing and what they're really feeling. And I think some of those techniques that James is sharing with us are really going to come in handy for people during this time.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for sharing that. Annie, you have a hand up. Can you respond?
Yeah, I just, was thinking just in terms of like being mindful of where we are, right? So I think the non-judgment part of, I must name this feeling that I'm feeling is sometimes not feasible, right? Because, sometimes you're just trying to get through the muck. Like, for example, yesterday I had a horrible day. I woke up and I was just not in the right space. I had lots of meetings, go through, so I could only focus, one moment at a time. But in those moments, I'm like, okay, something's not right. What do I need, in this particular moment? Do I need to eat something? Do I need to, get more coffee? Do I need more water? What is it do I need? Do I need to take a walk? And so in mucking through the day, but being mindful in those small little moments was helpful in getting me through the day. And so by the end of the night, I knew that I needed to go to bed earlier. I needed, to nourish myself, a little bit more. And so it then set up this day up, better. I woke up much better, this morning. So I think sometimes not being able to label something is okay, but being mindful of something's not quite right. What do I need? Where can I find tools to help me cope with that particular moment is helpful.
I'm wondering also, with everything that we are going through and those around us, if the change, we go back and look historically how things may have been this time of year, and the change may have a sudden or a different effect on us where it's difficult for us to name it and tame it. Is that possible? Anyone want to respond to that?
I can take a chance at that. And I think I first want to say, first of all, in terms of me sharing practices, I didn't make up these practices, and I frankly have been learning from you all as much as anything I'm sharing. Ms. Huang, what you just shared around not being able to label something in the moment, that might be elusive. And I don't know why I'm feeling this way, but just being mindful in the way you describe to say, who cares if I can't name it or describe it? I can see what I need to maybe move past whatever it is that I'm feeling around. That's an insight you just offered me, so I appreciate that. Ms. Ferrara, in terms of that question, I interpreted that as this moment being so different than any other moment really any of us have ever lived through. For me, thinking back to kind of growing up on Long Island, as May came around, I would think of, I'm starting to get opportunities to be outside. Maybe it's a chance to start my spring season of baseball or lacrosse or into cheering. And maybe I'm going to the beach now. And that's not there. And if that's been there for 10, 15, 20, or those of us adults, 50 years, that's in the body. That's in the mind. So there may be things that we can't articulate. Why do I feel this way? Oh, it's because for every year of my life, May felt like this, and now May doesn't. So I think if I'm interpreting the question properly, that's a bit of my experience, is that I can sense, particularly with the changing of the seasons, this is different than any other kind of early spring I've experienced in my life.
And I think, and just to jump back on, to what James was saying, and also what, Joy is saying, this time of the school year is where, AP exams, we're getting ready for graduation stuff, our seniors, and much like what James was saying, like that sense of loss of not being able to participate in baseball, going to games and practices and things like that, and going to the beach. I mean, I'm a huge baseball fan, and like when the season was canceled, or spring training was canceled, I felt a great deal sense of loss. And so I think a lot of what we're feeling, we could probably categorize it as just grief. We're missing out on the things that we normally do, and we're not able to do it because of, multitude of different reasons. And for whatever your personal feelings are about, quarantine or whatever it might be, for you right now, you're not able to do things. So you're missing out. Right. So it's the fear of missing out, the sense of loss, and the grieving process. Oh my God, lacrosse season is done. How am I ever going to, I've lost my entire, senior year. This is the last time I'm going to be playing lacrosse, my senior year. I'm never going to get that moment back. The graduation, the prom, all those things, right? I'm never going to get that moment back. And so I think stopping ourselves and pausing to think about, what is it that I'm feeling at this moment? How do I get myself, back? This is not a forever situation. How do I look towards the positive and find things that can drive me and get me moving forward again?
Does anyone else want to respond to that? Colleen, did you have your hand up?
I did. Not really responding to that in particular, but I think at a time where we find ourselves closely together with family more than we've ever been, I think of James' micro practice, and I think we can apply it not only to situations, but to people and our relationships. When we have an issue with a person, we tend to become hyper-focused on just what they did wrong or what's annoying us about them. And it's really important, I think, to take that step back and remind ourselves really to look at the whole person and not just focus in on some little traits or things that are going on that are rubbing us the wrong way. So I think it helps with situations as well as with relationships.
Thank you for that, Colleen. I absolutely agree. And I think one of the things, and Shannon, in your presentation, you said that thoughts and feelings are temporary. It is in the moment, a fleeting thought, a feeling. And I think that during this time, it's really important that we have an emotional speed bump partner, someone who could be that speed bump for us, because it's very easy to allow those emotions to spin and not let them pass as the clouds are passing by. Christy, I see you have your hand up.
Well, forgive me because I can't remember offhand who said this, but there was a quote, this is only a chapter of our story. And I think on those really difficult days, that's like just a quote to live by right now. you know, the next page is going to have a whole different story, and we're going to get through to the end of the story.
Yeah, thank you for that. We are at the 30-minute mark now. Is there anyone who has a closing thought or a last piece of wisdom they'd like to share? Okay, Mr. Cook, did you want to wind us out?
Yeah, thank you. I'll jump in just for a moment and then transition to Mr. Gallagher. I really appreciate that we have this opportunity that has started a little bit with the training opportunities presented to us from district office, that we're able to engage in this and supported by the board. But now to take this conversation into, I would say, our normal practice, but this is far from our normal practice, but into more regular type of conversation, I can only see as benefiting our community really in tremendous ways down the line. So this is kind of the beginnings of our conversations around how to center ourselves and how to live in the present moment, and all the many nuances of what that means. And so I'm eager to participate in the conversation. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to do this. So thank you to each of you for so clearly leaning into this space and having the ways that you're reflecting on yourself be present with us all, and that makes a big impact. So thank you. Mr. Gallagher, if you want to take it from here, appreciate it. And otherwise, we're pretty close to the conclusion of our third Wellness Wednesday.
Thank you, Mr. Cook, and thank you, Ms. Farrar, for facilitating our question and learning session. So I will just close briefly with a minute to exit. It's always nice to just kind of bring a bookend closure as we transition to whatever's next in our day. So within our minute to exit, let's go back to our noting practice. So as a reminder, you can do this with your eyes closed. Doesn't have to be the full eye, with your eyes open. Doesn't have to close your eyes. I'm going to just focus down on my laptop. And I'm just going to see and note what's here in my mind. Restless comes to mind. I've been sitting at my computer. That gives me some data to say, I'm restless. I'm going to go take a walk, maybe 5 minutes. So I invite you to either lower your gaze, keep your eyes open, or close your eyes and just see what cloud is rolling through your mind now. Positive, negative, neutral. See if you can note it, give it a name. And that's it. You can raise your gaze or open your eyes. You have a little bit more data to inform the next few moments, minutes of your day. With that, I wish everyone a great week. Be safe and be well, and always grateful to be with you all.
Bye, everybody. And thank you, Mr. Gallagher, Mrs. Farrar, and Mrs. Griffin. Kudos. Good stuff. Thank you so much.
That was
Bye,
wonderful.
guys.
Indeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, see you at Health and Counseling.